I would like to start by recognizing our student council. The last time we were in this gym together, I believe, was for the Great Homecoming Assembly. And this event this morning is all done by Ms. McKinnon, Mr. Fitzpatrick, and our great student council. So how about a round of applause for our great student council? Put together, I should say, and then obviously accompanied by our great performing arts as well. So how about a round for our performing arts here at Goffstown High School? At this time, I would like to call to the podium the chair of the assembly and the co-chair of the assembly, Pamela Castillo-Diaz and Eric Choquette.
Please stand as the veterans are escorted into the gymnasium, accompanied by a selection from the GHS band. Please be seated. Thank you, GHS band members.
Welcome to this year's Veterans Day Assembly. Since the formation of this country, ordinary people have taken up arms and made the ultimate sacrifice to protect Americans and the American way of life. This is why, on June 1st, 1954, Congress stated that November 11th would be a national holiday to honor all American veterans. Veterans Day gives us the opportunity to remember, appreciate, and thank the 23 million veterans living among us that have served this country during times of war and peace. Veterans, welcome, and thank you for your service and dedication. Please stand and remain standing while you join us in the national anthem.
First, will you please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? I. Please be seated. Thank you, chorus. Next, we'd like to welcome to the podium Mr. McBride to introduce our guest speaker.
And let me join Pamela again in welcoming our veterans here, and another great round of applause for our veterans. Thank you for being here. Christina Johnson is a 2005 graduate of Goffstown High School. She joined active duty Air Force in 2007 in the security forces. Christina went on 2 combat tours in Iraq. She also was deployed once to Saudi Arabia and once to El Salvador. Currently a technical sergeant in the New Hampshire Air Guard in the Military Equal Opportunity Office. She's headed to officer training this January in Alabama for 8 weeks, and she will leave there as a second lieutenant. She graduated from the University of New Hampshire with a BA in business and holds an associate's degree in criminal justice. Currently the sales manager for Advanced Technologies Company in Portland, Maine. Please join me in welcoming back Goffstown High School graduate and today's guest speaker, Christina Johnson.
Good morning. First, I would like to start and thank the administration, faculty, staff, student council, band, and chorus for putting together a phenomenal event. Secondly, it goes without mention that all the men and women sitting in the front 2 rows here, thank you for your support and your service to this amazing country. So a little over 10 years ago, I was sitting in the exact same seat that you are, a 17-year-old senior at GHS, not quite sure about what my next step in life was, but I knew that all the adventures and opportunities were right in front of me. So here's a little bit about my story. And there's 5 major lessons involved with the past 10 years of my life. So after I graduated from Goffstown High School in 2005, I decided to go to St. Anselm College to study nursing. It was my passion and dream in all of high school to become a nurse. After 3 months, that dream epically failed because I quickly learned that it is not what I wanted to do. And being knee-deep in student loans, I decided to then transfer to UNH Manchester. So lesson number 1, follow your dreams. It's not always going to work out like you thought it was going to. So follow your passion and develop another dream. After 2 years at UNH Manchester, I was naturally drawn to the business leadership program. I credit much of my leadership passion from Miss Nichols and Mr. Romaine from student council and soccer while a student at Goffstown High School. Single-handedly, the one college course changed my life. During a summer semester in a business leadership class, it was a requirement to write a life plan at 21. Within my life plan, it had always been a goal to join the military. When asked a simple question of what was stopping me, nothing was the simple answer. 3 weeks later, I found myself at Lackland Air Force Base in Texas at Air Force Basic Training. Lesson 2, trust your gut and always take the risk. Immediately following basic training, I completed Security Forces Technical School at Lackland Air Force Base and was then stationed at Luke Air Force Base in Phoenix. I was stationed at the largest fighter wing in the world with over 100 F-16 aircrafts. No less than 6 months later, I was deployed to the southernmost province of Iraq in Camp Bucca, which is located in the province of Basra. I worked at a detention facility with over 30,000 detainees. That's the size of Goffstown. While there, I worked and processed 200 civilians on and off the base every day, and I ran combat patrols from Basra to Baghdad. This was in 2008 to 2009, in the height of Operation Iraqi Freedom. I was 21 years old, in a combat zone, sitting in a Humvee carrying a 240, when just 3 years earlier, I was sitting in the same seats that you are. So my lesson 3, I quickly learned that people, no matter where you are in the world, are just people, and people are inherently good. After spending 7 months in Iraq and going through Kuwait, Qatar, UAE, Germany, Ireland, and then Bangor, and then finally back to the States, I was only home for 6 months before I deployed once again back to Iraq. On this tour, I was stationed at Joint Base Balad, which was one of the largest bases in the entire Iraqi theater and had over 50,000 military and civilian members there. During this deployment, I had many missions, convoys, patrols, and law enforcement. We traveled in and out of the city in order to foster relationships with the Iraqi villagers. It was one of the most difficult times of my life, and there I experienced a lot of violence, turmoil, and unfortunately significant loss. So whatever your next opportunity is after high school, the people you meet along the way and the friendships you develop will change you. Those people are part of the reasons of your success and your failures, and you are always the company you keep, so don't take them for granted. And after returning home, after my second combat tour in Iraq, I wasn't home long before I was then stationed at Escon Village in the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. And for those that don't know much about Saudi Arabia, the women's rights over there are not recognized like they are in the United States. In addition to that, I also did a tour in El Salvador, which is per capita the murder capital of the world. And on both of these assignments, my mission there was to train women in the military, armed forces, and law enforcement on hand-to-hand combat techniques and law enforcement practices. I fostered incredible relationships with them and still remain in contact with different women across the world. So my lesson number 5, the most valuable lesson that I learned throughout my time in the Air Force is how lucky and fortunate we are to live in the United States of America. The freedoms we experience every day, largely in part to the veterans across the country, should not be taken for granted. So I ask of you to take 1 second to shake a hand, give a hug, give a high five, or just say thank you to the men and women sitting in this room today that have served your country. And I'll leave you with this. At the end of the day, no matter where you go in life, this town and this community, especially of Goffstown, is here to support you. So thank you for the opportunity to come speak today, and I hope you found my insight valuable, and thank you for your support for the veterans today and every day.
Thank you, Technical Sergeant Christina Johnson. Each year, we take this opportunity to thank our local heroes. Thank you for the service you have given to our country and to us. Student Council members will now recognize the veterans who are here with us today. Veterans, please make yourself known or stand if you are able when your name is announced.
Major Ed Hannigan. Major Ed Hannigan served in the Army for 30 years.
From 1967 to 1970, he served in the Medical Corps, and he served from 1970 to 1998 as a field artillery officer. He also served in Vietnam. During his time in the service, he has commanded at all levels up to battalion. His greatest experience was traveling the world and visiting many countries, including Australia, Europe, and the Pacific. Now he is happily retired and would like to tell you, though there were good days and bad days, as with anything else, you forget the bad days and enhance the good ones. Thank you for your service, Major Ed Hannigan.
Sergeant Kyle Pratt. Sergeant Kyle Pratt has been in the Army for 8 years, serving as a Cavalry Scout and Jump Master. He gathers intel on the enemy's position as a Cavalry Scout and ensures the paratroopers a safe landing as the Jump Master. He has been deployed to Afghanistan twice and has served 22 months there. He was a part of the search and rescue team to try and find Sergeant Birdow, the only prisoner of war in Afghanistan at the time. He was stationed in Alaska for 6 years and now has been a recruiter for the Army for the last 1.5 years. Thank you for your service, Sergeant Kyle Pratt.
Lieutenant Commander Peter Galamaga. Commander Galamaga received his commission out of the NROTC program at the College of the Holy Cross. He was stationed in Norfolk, Virginia as the anti-submarine warfare officer on the guided missile cruiser USS Josephus Daniels, and also served as the auxiliaries officer and assistant overhaul coordinator. After completing his active duty commitment, Commander Galamaga served in various capacities in the Naval Reserve. Some of his units include Naval Control of Shipping, Icelandic Defense Force, and the Naval Office of Information in Boston. Mr. Galamaga left the Navy to pursue his lifelong goal of becoming an English teacher and making a positive difference in the lives of young people. He teaches here at Goffstown High School and is happy to work here with his lovely wife, Monica. Thank you, Lieutenant Commander Galamaga.
Jason O'Neill. Mr. O'Neill retired from the military as a sergeant major in the Army and worked in the field artillery. He served from 1980 to 2010, and during this time toured in Bosnia, Iraq, and Jordan. He received a Bronze Star in Iraq. During his tours, Jason was amazed at seeing how different the culture was of these countries. Currently, he assists the ASPCA in breaking up pit bull fighting ranges and animal rescue. Thank you for your service, Jason O'Neill.
Lieutenant Michael Pelletier. Lieutenant Michael Pelletier has served in the New Hampshire Army National Guard for over 20 years, starting in 1987. He has served in the Joint Force Headquarters in Concord. Lieutenant Pelletier was deployed in both Operation Iraqi Freedom II during 2004 and 2005, and Operation New Dawn during 2010 and 2011. He operated in field artillery. He continues to serve today and enjoys seeing young faces in the service who bring their new perspectives and ideas. Thank you for your service.
Staff Sergeant Katie Hannigan. Staff Sergeant Katie Hannigan has been a part of New Hampshire National Guard for the last 18 years. She's a program analyst, which means she reviews and goes through the budget. By doing this, in her last deployment in Kuwait in 2010-2011, she helped 700 soldiers with paperwork, making sure they got the correct pay. In her first deployment in Iraq, she was a gunner. This means that she protected colonels who went out to talk to village chiefs. Staff Sergeant Katie Hannigan has one main statement for advice. Never take anything for granted. While deployed in Iraq in 2004-2005, her view on life was changed when she saw kids running around without shoes and using the same water for baths, drinking, and mixing with mud to build houses. A family joke she shared with me is that she never wanted to join the military despite her father's attempts to persuade her. However, in her freshman year of college, while on break, she decided to join. She hopes that one day her daughter Zara will join too. Thank you so much for your service and for joining us today.
Mr. Bill Rumpf. Bill Rumpf worked as an air traffic control tower and GCA operator. Having spent 4 years in the Air Force, he landed planes using radar. During his service, he was recognized for a save, where he had acted in a situation that had been essential to the safe landing of a pilot. Now retired, Mr. Rumpf worked for the FAA for 44 years after his service. There, he was a supervisor and manager. Thinking back, Mr. Rumpf remembers one particular event during his service. A plane with minimum fuel was attempting to land. The station's GCA unit had lost all its radios and couldn't communicate with the pilot. Mr. Rumpf tuned in to the plane's GCA via the tower and was able to then contact the pilot and relay information to him, allowing him to land. Thank you for your service, Mr. Rumpf.
Miss Deborah Gaynor Migel, the mother of our own Miss Atkinson. Miss Migel served as an E4 in the U.S. Army for 3 years. Her specialty was in medical laboratory technology, and she worked at the Army Research Institute of Environmental Medicine. Here, Miss Migel did research on the effects of altitude on soldiers and worked with soldiers to curb these effects. One of the experiences she considers most important to her is the 3 or 4 weeks she spent on top of Pikes Peak with soldiers serving in the Vietnam War. Now she is a self-employed benefit consultant and helps people find insurance packages. She also volunteers as a board member for Child and Family Services in New Hampshire and loves doing the work that she does. We thank Ms. Migel for her service.
Mr. Russ Laureate. Russ Laureate graduated from GHS in 1968 and is a lifelong Goffstown resident. He enlisted in the U.S. Army on July 5, 1969. On July 7, 1969, he was at Fort Dix, New Jersey, for basic training. On December 5th, he landed in Vietnam and served with the 765th Transportation Battalion, the 317th Light Equipment Company, and the 1st Aviation Brigade. He was a driver and mechanic and traveled all over to repair or deliver parts. He left Vietnam on February 12, 1972, after 2 years, 2 months, and 8 days of service. Mr. Laureate received the National Defense Ribbon and Medal, Vietnam Service Medal and Ribbon, 2 Army Commendation Medals and Ribbons, Republic of Vietnam Campaign Ribbon with Device 1960 and Medal, Meritorious Unit Commendation Ribbon, the Sharpshooter Badge with Rifle Bar, Republic of Vietnam Cross of Gallantry with Palm Unit Citation, and the Driver Mechanic Badge with Mechanic 4 Bars. Mr. Russ Laureate said that if he had to do it all over again, he'd do the same exact thing, and that he'd always be proud to serve his country. We thank Mr. Laureate for his service.
Senior Airman John Dyer. Mr. John Dyer served as an aircraft electrician for 6 years. He successfully completed environmental electrical training. He completed C-5 cargo aircraft training, which is the largest cargo aircraft in the United States military inventory, and was able to be a part of an in-air refueling sortie. He is a licensed electrician and educational consultant. Mr. John Dyer would like to share that the military was successful in putting enough obstacles in front of him to bring out the best in him. He is privileged to have served his country. Thank you for your service, Mr. John Dyer.
Corporal Christian Blanchett. With the rank of Specialist 4, Corporal Blanchett served in Vietnam from 1968 to 1969. Corporal Blanchett was a part of the Artillery Union in the 2nd Field Force and was the youngest member in his group at the age of 18. Chris's older brother also joined in the fight the same time he did, but they were separated into different groups. 2 weeks before they were being sent home, Chris's brother and a few of his buddies were killed. After Chris retired in 1969, he joined the company General Electric and worked on making parts for aircraft engines in the aircraft engine division. He worked with GE for 36 years and retired 10 years ago. Today, Chris enjoys traveling with his wife Patricia, riding his motorcycle, and helping out, as well as visiting veterans at the VA and nursing home. He also likes to greet veterans and servicemen and women coming home from Afghanistan and Iraq, due to the many Vietnam vets not being welcomed home. Thank you, Corporal Blanchett.
Master Sergeant King. Mr. King was an avionics test systems specialist at the Vermont Air Guard. During his 27 years of service, he served 4 tours to the Middle East. He has received an Iraqi Freedom Medal and was the career advisor of his unit, advising younger airmen on how to get the most out of their careers. In Iraq, he volunteered in the Iraqi ward of a hospital where they treated injured civilians. Sergeant King received his GI Bill benefits to pay for his college education as well. This is Mr. King's 6th year being honored here at Crosstown High School, and he is now retired. One of the high points in his career was flying over New Hampshire on an F-16. We thank you for your service.
Mr. Bill Vickery. Mr. Vickery served as a sergeant in the 172nd Mountain Infantry of the New Hampshire Army National Guard for 6 years, from 2002 to 2008. He graduated from the U.S. Army Mountain Warfare School in 2003. His unit went to Iraq in 2004 to 2005. Their responsibilities included convoy escorts, route security, and night ambush missions. They were also involved in the invasion of Fallujah in November of 2004. Now he is enjoying his role as a father to 3 girls and is a working man. He'd like to say that he believes the military is a great place for almost anyone, and besides the deployment, which took him away from his family, he would do it again. He would also like to thank everyone for setting up this assembly. Thank you, Mr. Vickery, for your service.
Chief Petty Officer Paul Sidak. Chief Sidak enlisted in the United States Coast Guard in January of 1983 after attending New Hampshire Technical Institute in Concord, New Hampshire. After graduating basic training in Cape May, New Jersey, Chief Sidak was assigned to duty in Newcastle, New Hampshire, aboard a 210-foot U.S. Coast Guard cutter, active in March of 1983. While aboard the ship, he was part of a 90-person crew whose mission was maritime law enforcement, New England fishery patrols, and search and rescue missions. Chief Sitak visited places such as Hawaii, Guantanamo Bay, Jamaica, Bermuda, and many ports on the East Coast of the United States. Chief Sitak was in active duty for 5 years and left it in 1988. He moved back to New Hampshire to raise a family, but continued his Coast Guard career in the Coast Guard Reserve for the next 25 years, serving in the same role and capacity as an active duty member, but just part-time. Some of his greatest memories of his time in service were about everything else, the lifelong friendships he made while serving. There are many great events, some exciting and not so happy, but equally important. But all have made him proud to be part of such a great service. Chief Sitak retired from the United States Coast Guard in February of 2013 with 30 years combined service. He is married to Christy Sitak, who graduated in 1983, and has 3 children, Amanda, Ray, and Carrie, all Goffstown High School graduates. Thank you, Paul, for your service.
Mr. Howard Town. Mr. Town was an aircraft inspector for 35 years in the United States Air Force and a senior master sergeant. He also served in the Air National Guard as an aircraft inspector on 12 different aircrafts. Early in his training, he experienced crash landing in North Carolina. During World War II, he flew to Africa, Sicily, England, and France for 3 years, and served with the 29th Troop Carrier Squad, transporting troops from the 82nd and 101st Airborne into combat. The rest of his time he spent in the United States. He later became an instructor teaching mechanics in the Air Force. Now happily retired for 35 years, he visits New Boston Central School to speak about his experience in the Air Force. Thank you, Mr. Town.
Miss Ann Jordan. Miss Ann Jordan served in the United States Air Force from 1984 until 1987. She was an administrative specialist and was stationed at Lackland Air Force Base in San Antonio, Texas, and at Eielson Air Force Base outside of Fairbanks, Alaska. At Lackland Air Force Base, she processed outbound basic trainees, and at Eielson Air Force Base, she worked in the command section of the supply squadron. She also served on Honor Guard and on the search and recovery team at both bases. During her service, Mr. Jordan earned an Achievement Medal, a Good Conduct Medal, and an Overseas Medal. She feels that serving in the Air Force is one of the best things she's ever done in her life. Thank you for your service.
Private First Class Arthur Bergen. Mr. Arthur Bergen was inducted into the United States Army Infantry Branch on March 21st, 1952. He received his basic infantry training at Fort Ord, California, and upon graduation was deployed to Korea and assigned to the headquarters and headquarters company of the 160th Regiment, 40th Infantry Division, arriving there in October 1952. At the time, the regiment was engaged in combat on Bloody Ridge in Central Korea. After 3 months, the regiment was relieved and assigned a reserve position until the ceasefire was signed at Panmunjom. It was then transferred to the island of Kogi-do to guard prisoners of war. In November 1953, he was rotated home transferred into the inactive reserve, and upon completion of his 8 years of active and reserve duty, he was honorably discharged. His awards include the Combat Infantryman's Badge, the National Defense Service Medal, the Korean Service Medal with 3 Bronze Service Stars, and the United Nations Service Medal. After returning from Korea, he attended UCLA on the GI Bill and received a Bachelor of Science degree from the College of Engineering in 1957, and then spent 17 years in the aerospace industry in the design of guidance systems for air-to-air, air-to-ground, and intercontinental ballistic missiles. In 1966, he returned to school at Loyola Marymount School of Law in Los Angeles, receiving his JD degree in 1970. Admitted to the California Bar in 1971, he then practiced law until 1985 when he retired to New Boston. Thank you, Private First Class Arthur Bergen.
Sergeant Doris Seastream. Sergeant Doris Seastream served in the Army as a Signals Intelligence Officer for 3 years active duty and 9 years in the reserves. During her service from 1981 to 1993, she earned the Army Achievement Medal and the Army of Occupation Medal. Currently, she lives on a sailboat and travels the world. She also taught at Goffstown High School for 25 years. The one thing she learned from her service was, don't be afraid to try new adventures. Thank you for your service, Sergeant Doris Seastream.
Mr. Richard Hoff. Richard Hoff got into the Navy right out of high school in 1966. He was assigned to ship USS Yellowstone in the Mediterranean. He then was stationed in Memphis at a jet school and was a jet mechanic there. He went through 2 tours in Vietnam as a gunner's mate for 18 months. He also maintained 2 remote-controlled helicopters that searched the Pacific for any enemy submarines. His biggest achievement in his eyes is that he made it back. He traveled all around the world, went to Italy, the Panama Canal twice, Pearl Harbor twice, you name it, he's been there. After 4 years active duty and 9 years in the reserves, he went into the insurance business for 30 years. He has been a Goffstown resident since 1976. His daughter graduated from Goffstown High. He also started the Rotary Club in Goffstown. Thank you for your service.
Ellen Oldenburg. Mr. Oldenburg is currently a colonel in the Massachusetts Army National Guard. He started his service in 1993 and currently is assigned to the Joint Force Headquarters Plan and Policy Director. He spent 24 years in the Army, being deployed in support of Operation Enduring Freedom and to Operation Iraqi Freedom. He is a recipient of the Bronze Star and was deployed to Afghanistan, Pakistan, Uzbekistan, and Taji, Iraq. Allen has commanded soldiers at company and battalion level. His 24 years has given him the opportunity to see the world and work with many different nations and people of very diverse backgrounds. Currently, he is a sergeant with the Manchester Police Department and a student at the U.S. Army War College, where he is working to receive his master's degree in strategic studies. He also takes care of his beloved son, Hunter Oldenburg. Thank you for your service, Alan Oldenburg.
Colonel Gail M. Prince. Colonel Prince is a Manchester, New Hampshire native and graduate of Memorial High School, class of 1974. 4 years later, she graduated from Indiana State University with a degree in criminology. 1 year later, she joined the United States Air Force through the Officers Training Program, receiving her commission as a second lieutenant and assigned as a security police officer. Gail moved through the ranks as a security police officer, serving in a number of command and staff positions, to include her assignment as the Air Force's first woman chief of security police. She then moved out of the security field, taking command of the Air Force ROTC program at Boston University, where she served as Director of Aerospace Studies. During this earlier period of her career, she completed all requisite professional military education and a sponsored master's degree program at California State University, where she was awarded a Master of Arts degree in criminal justice. Following a one-year assignment as a National Defense Fellow, Gail was assigned to the Office of the Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff in the Pentagon. There, she was initially tasked as a policy advisor to the chairman and senior national leaders on United Nations operations issues, but was rapidly transferred to Homeland Security's actions after the September 11, 2001 attacks because of her extensive background in law enforcement and security operations. With promotion to colonel, she was selected for a highly competitive senior command billet as the Air Force's Western Region Recruiting Group Commander, a position encompassing over 700 recruiters covering 17 states and 5 Pacific Rim countries. Colonel Prince culminated her career at the conclusion of this command in October 2004, serving a total of 25 years to the nation. Colonel Prince's military decorations include the Legion of Merit, Joint Meritorious Service Medal, the Air Force Meritorious Service Medal with 5 oak leaf clusters, and the Korean Defense Medal. Since retirement, Gail has worked as the Director of Study for a private security company in the Washington, D.C. area, and then as security consultant with the Washington, D.C. area Catholic Charities. She also spent a year in Kabul, Afghanistan as a senior police advisor from 2010 to 2011. She is now the proprietor of the Bedford, New Hampshire Greenhouse Project, a blending of the local refugee population with wonderful people from the greater Manchester area. She also consults with the New Hampshire National Representatives on veteran challenges, serves on the Boscawen Veteran Cemetery Advisory Board, and is an active member of the Manchester American Legion Swing Post. Thank you for your service.
Mr. Al Baines. Mr. Baines served in the U.S. Air Force from 1962 to 1966, during which time he served in Vietnam from 1965 to 1966. He was stationed in Loring Air Force Base in Maine when not deployed. During his time of service, he received the Air Force Commendation Medal, Vietnam Service Medal, and recognition in expert marksmanship. He cites the first time he was attacked at San Nhut Air Base in February of 1966 as a particularly eye-opening experience. He is now almost 72 and retired. He has lived in Goffstown for 38 years with his wife, and his family includes his children, all of whom graduated from Goffstown High School, and 11 grandchildren. He is very proud to serve his country during the Vietnam War and has the highest respect for all of those serving currently. Thank you, Mr. Baines.
Greg Gualtieri. Mr. Gualtieri served as a private first class, and he served in Berlin, Germany from 1962 to 1965. He served on the Berlin Brigade, 6th Infantry. During his tour in Berlin, Germany, the Russians closed off East Berlin from West Berlin. They quickly closed off all avenues of access between East and West, and kept families, friends, and places of work completely separated. It was a sudden evil event that shocked the world, and they were helpless to assist people that tried to escape to West Berlin. Many tried to cross through the barbed wire and minefields. Most were captured, clubbed, or even shot, trying to flee communism. On June 26, 1963, President John Kennedy visited Berlin to assure Berliners that they were fully committed to prevent additional communist atrocities. That day, President Kennedy made his most famous speech.
Ich bin ein Berliner. I am a Berliner. He was part of the security detail and positioned 6 feet from the presidential podium. If he would like to share anything with us today, it is that communism is evil. We'd like to thank Mr. Galtieri for his service.
Mr. Jean Pelletier. Mr. Jean Pelletier volunteered for the draft, entering the military in 1954 until 1956, where he was in the Army Security Agency during the Korean War. Mr. Pelletier was also a member of the 4 Devons Medical Group. After receiving his GI Bill, he attended the American International AIC, where he graduated and became an accountant for United Aircraft. Mr. Pelletier fell in love with electronics, with which he worked in the field for 40 years after. Now Mr. Pelletier has retired. We thank you for your service.
Mr. Brad Parkers. Mr. Brad Parkers enlisted in the U.S. Army in 1967 for 4 years of active duty. He retired as a Master Sergeant after 32 years of service in the National Guard and Army Reserve. His deployments included Korea, 6 times to Iceland, 3 times to Canada, as well as joint NATO exercises. He received 2 Meritorious Service Medals, Overseas Deployment Ribbon, and a National Defense Medal, as well as other awards and decorations. Mr. Parkers is now retired from work, and is involved with UNH hockey, football, and with the Goffstown Flying Club, and is a member of GTV and enjoys genealogical research. Thank you, Mr. Parkers, for your service.
Mr. Ken Southard. Mr. Southard served 24 years in the Air Force as an air traffic controller. Over this time, he was the personal manager for over 5,500 air traffic controllers and chief controller of Air Traffic Control Tower and Radar. He was also commandant of Air Traffic Management School. Mr. Southard ran a supply operation for an orphanage in Vietnam and coordinated a rescue for an F-100 crew that was shot down in the Mekong's Delta. He retired as Chief Master Sergeant and now works part-time with a jeweler and is an international antique dealer and auctioneer. Thank you for your service.
Next, we would like to honor veterans with a poem read by Mitchell Skacke.
The Noble and the Brave, a Veterans Day Tribute by Joanna Fuchs. When America had an urgent need, these brave ones raised a hand. No hesitation held them back. They were proud to take a stand. They left their friends and family. They gave up normal life. To serve their country and their God, they plowed into the strife. They fought for freedom and for peace on strange and foreign shores. Some lost new friends, some lost their lives in long and brutal wars. Other veterans answered a call to support the ones who fought. Their country had requirements for the essential skills they brought. We salute every one of them, the noble and the brave, the ones still with us here today, and those who rest in a grave. So here's to our country's heroes, they're a cut above the rest. Let's give the honor that is due to our country's very best. Thank you.
Please stand to recognize our servicemen and women who are here today.
Students, please remain in your seats while student council members escort veterans to the senior cap.